Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Hillyard, and I'm here today with Rav Chahal. Hey, Rav.
Hi, Sue.
And we are doing the next episode in our Astro Coffee up close and personal interviews with your favorite and our favorite astrologers. And today, our favorite astrologer is none other than Jordyn Smith. Welcome, Jordyn.
Hello, ladies.
It's so good to
Hi.
have you here.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So, well, let's see. I guess I could start off with a little connection. Jordyn's and my connection is pretty deep. Her Pluto is right on my Mars. So her Scorpio Pluto and my Scorpio Mars tend to go kind of deep at times.
Kind of.
Kind of. Yeah, we're not afraid to go there.
No. No, we are not.
So Jordyn has been very kind to allow us to look at her chart as we talk about it and her journey with astrology. So let's move on to that. And let's start with our first question of, why don't you tell us what drew you to astrology and then along the way how it shows in your chart?
Okay. Well, I was always into astrology growing up. I grew up in a very patriarchal religious family here in Oklahoma, and uh I came in asking a lot of questions, to much of my family's annoyance. um, and so I was always into astrology, always into uh, plants, homeopathy at a young age. My mom, luckily, we would like go to Barnes and Noble. My mom would like buy me homeopathy or astrology books if I was really in found one I liked. Um, but growing up and wanting a career, I didn't really see that I could have a career in astrology. And I had a child at a pretty young age. At 20, I was pregnant at 19 when Pluto transited my Uranus. Um, and so I was more into like, I need to be an adult, very Capricorn. And so I had a couple of careers. And then during my Saturn return, through a lot of intense experiences, I was really disillusioned and unhappy with life. And so what I started asking myself, this was during the time I had my second child. I started, and it was my nodal opposition as well. I started asking myself, well, what did I like whenever I was a child? Like, I'm sure I still like it. And so I started getting back into homeopathy and astrology. And then I found EA through a, happenstance. And then from there, it's never stopped. I've immersed myself in it. So does that answer that? I hope it does.
It totally does. And for um, your grasp of the topic of EA is just amazing. I mean, your ability to synthesize the concepts of it, as well as the transits and then pull in some asteroids too. It's just it's incredible. I'm always amazed.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Sue. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
Jordyn, also, you talk about coming into, you just mentioned it and described it perfectly, and I know you know this. You said a patriarchal religious family, your South Node is in Virgo in the fourth house, and that ruler is that Mercury in Capricorn in the ninth house. So you talk about setting the scene from the get-go. You know this, that you were
Yes.
like, right, I'm gonna come into this lifetime. I've got work to do. Let's go. And that's
Yes.
very much how it's been, right?
Yeah, I love telling this story because this is such a great demonstration of Virgo Cap, even my Pluto, and that's and we know
Mm.
that Capricorn often can be like the father, we see that a lot as the father. Um, but I was born into a really consensus family, and was I put myself in therapy at 12 and didn't stop. Like, that's the nature of my 8th house and my Pluto, okay? And the reason why I bring this up is I did it for 22 years and I absolutely loved it, but it capped out. I even worked in mental health for a while. Um, but it was whenever I found DA and I heard Jeffrey Wolf Green talking about sadomasochism. And I have a lot of kind of sadomasochistic stories that have ran my life up until my Saturn return. And one of the things that I want to say that I think just like makes me chuckle, this is such like my 9th house, Jupiter on my ascendant and my Venus and Sag, where I can laugh at this, is I remember learning about sadomasochism through EA. And if anyone knows about this in EA, you know that this is definitely a Virgo Pisces dynamic mixed with a Capricornian function. And we know that the sadomasochism comes from the Garden of Eden myth. And every Easter, I would go to my great uncle Walter's church, who is a pastor, and my dad would get to preach every Easter, and he preached about Genesis, which is the Garden of Eden myth. And so when I was learning about it, I was just like, you cannot make this up. Like, this is totally in my chart, like right here. Like, no wonder. Like, so going back to the conditioning we choose to come back into. And I think for me, my Mercury and my moon are in a square, and that square has definitely been a square that is about me throwing off everything and just going for it. And I think in this lifetime, I just needed to go to, private Catholic school and sit and listen to family members preach, which is such a 9th house kind of dynamic as well, the dogma. For me to be like 29-degree Libra moon, I'm tired of hearing this shit. I'm so over it, like, for me to throw it off. So I did want to point that out.
Well, Jupiter retrograde is that function, isn't it? Where you will only absorb the truth.
Yes.
And it's like you've listened to other stories, I would say, previous incarnations coming in. That respect element comes in, right? But then Jupiter retrograde on that ascendant physically, you're like, and it's Aries, linked. It's very much for I see, and I can see it with you, I've seen it with you. It's very much, there's a core essence of I know what the truth is. If it resonates with whoever, great. If it doesn't, fine. But I will radiate my truth, and whoever wants to like be attracted to you, even if people repel. Let's say somebody repels you. For you, I know it's going to be there's a lesson in that person which they're not aligning with, because it's never about us, is it? It's always about it's never about them. It's always about us. So whoever that information that you're sharing out there in the world, you're very I see you as a very strong woman who gets up there and it's like, this is my truth. This is what I'm sharing with you. If you want to listen, great. If you don't, jog on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that has a lot to do with my Kassandra as well.
Yes.
And
Which
my
you're very passionate
Kassandra,
about.
yeah, my Cassandra is ruled by that Jupiter. So yeah, a lot of it has been about recovering my own personal truth that is definitely polarized within my family system. And lots of lessons and learning that the only person that needs to know me is me, right? Like, and that's probably also the function of my Jupiter being in conjunct my moon, and both being ruled by that Venus in the 8th. Is it's just very much about knowing
Self-worth.
myself,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Kassandra is
Powerful
about recovering your voice. It's about not being believed.
Yes.
And then and being able to recover that, which I think is
Yeah. Which, I mean, in true eighth house fashion, I can tell you this is part of why I came to astrology is, I mean, you ladies know I've lived a really intense life. But for people who are listening, part of that Kassandra for me, and if we think about how it's in the eighth house, it's conjunct my Capricorn stuff, and it's ruled by Jupiter and Taurus retrograde. So much of my life has been about growing my own relationship to self, right? Because we can see with my moon, I've abandoned myself in prior lifetimes often, especially with the Virgo dynamic. And in this lifetime, so much so that I almost lost my life. We know this, like I've talked to you guys about it, but I love, I don't know about love, but I don't mind sharing this because I think that it's important for women to hear stories like this. But I was in a very physically and emotionally and sexually abusive relationship. And how my Kassandra plays into this is when I would talk about it, no one would listen to me. They felt that I was crazy, that I was making it up for attention. And it's because there was willful ignorance with the people that I was talking to about it, right? They didn't want to believe, very saggy, that something like that could happen to someone so close to them. And it took this person attempting to murder me and my child and my father for people, especially in my family system, to start to listen to me. And that is the one of the many ways that my Kassandra comes into play in my chart is, and it's a great example of it being in my eighth house. It was coming to life and death, me trying to speak my truth. This is happening to me and no one's listening to me. But what that did for me is it gave me a will to fight and to survive and to live. And I hate the expression of being a survivor, because ultimately, like my choices had led to that situation. Me not doing Jupiter and Taurus, right? Me doing more of a Libra moon and abandoning myself and doing these things at a young age. But it was really having my first child that anchored me and gave me the strength. And then also just listening to myself is what kept me alive, like for sure. And that's part of that Jupiter and Taurus on my ascendant ruling that the will to listen to myself, my intuition, like this person's trying to hurt me. And I don't care if no one believes me. The only person that's going to save you is yourself. And so I don't know. I don't even like calling myself like a survivor because I feel like it's so finite and it botches you into this kind of victimized consciousness, right? I mean, so, and maybe that's my Capricorn speaking of like, I'm not going to give that person any power, like Cap in the eighth. But yeah, I wanted to share that because that's how strong of an influence that my Kassandra has played in my life.
awesome. I mean, thank you for sharing that because
Yeah.
it is, I think, very useful for people to hear stuff like that. And, I also wonder how your Lilith here conjunct Pluto, plays into that whole story.
Yeah, I mean, my Lilith definitely gave me the gumption to be no BS about stuff for sure. It definitely, a Lilith in Scorpio is no BS. It's a fighter. I see my Lilith a lot too with people growing up. I always befriended people who weren't like no one else wanted to be friends with though. The underdog, the sixth house kind of dynamic. But yeah, I mean, my Lilith with that story, especially if we're talking about like sexual assault things, I feel like my Lilith definitely played into that for me to be a fighter, and not let something consume me, like dealing with the emotional content of it for sure, hence therapy and all of that, but also teaching me lessons about staying whole into myself, that I don't need anyone to complete me. And that whenever I've looked for it outside of myself, that it's actually gotten to me into some very precarious situations, right? So it's yeah, it's like this championing for myself, for my own self-sovereignty, I feel like. And it's not shown there, but I have Amazon there as well with, you know, my Vesta. And I think all of those goddesses have really held me throughout the dynamics that I've had to deal with in this lifetime. Because this is a lifetime of, I mean, I would love your take on this, but to me, when I look at my own chart and what rings true for me is I have totally chosen not to work on a lot of things in a lot of lifetimes, and this is my lifetime to just pull the band-aid off and to deal with it once and for all, and to not repress, right? To actually just face it head on. And so I think that's why I've had such an intense lifetime.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And
that jam-packed. Sorry, it's gone to.
I just want to say one little thing, and then I would love to hear what you have to say, Rav. Karma, asteroid karma here, you know, on your descendant, but also in the 6th house, in Scorpio, and what was the other one you said was right here?
Amazon.
Oh,
Amazon.
Amazon. Is that also in your 7th house?
It's at 25, I believe.
Okay,
So
so
it's in my 6th as well.
yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, definitely had a lot of intense experiences to be a catalyst for personal improvement. Like, because that much Capricorn, obviously I didn't want to deal with it for a lot of lifetimes. You know?
Yeah. I was just going to add that you know, and you know this, Jordyn, you've worked with many charts and many clients. When you see an 8th house, you know, emphasis, it is, and especially Pluto in Scorpio, the Scorpio generation, I feel, has come in to go, right, let's get to the bottom line. Let's purge what we need to purge, because this transformation, you know, evolution is the aim of the game. And with your 8th house emphasis there, you can see that it's about purging through all the my language, but the crap, the BS that's gone on previously, because deep down the soul knows what its true authenticity is, and it's within the divine within. Hence, you talk about the goddesses, that strong, all the goddess energy around you. And you know, it's amazing that you're working with Kassandra to bring it into the public eye more. You know, we've heard of stories and more myths to do with like fiction books, etc. But to know the true story behind Kassandra, you know, the reason why her voice was repressed and why she wasn't believed, etc. I think it's important to bring it into consciousness so people can work through it. And it's essentially how I see what you're doing is you're empowering women, but you've done it through empowering yourself first, which is so important. You know, it's, you know, you have to lead by example, and that's exactly what you're doing.
Yes. Well, and I think for me, I just feel a responsibility. It's, you know, my Capricorn, the last thing I want to do is to talk about something that I haven't had the direct experience of it, and then I'm not doing it, right? It's like I want to make sure that, especially if someone, because I typically get clients who go through really heavy things or have a lot of I mean, obviously we're talking about masochism here, like the stories that I'm sharing with you all, is someone who is a deeply masochistic soul. And this has been my lifetime of purging that from within me and having to confront it, the 8th house of why am I the way that I am, you know, and then realizing like, actually, this isn't your nature. This is like conditioning from lifetimes and feeling like a bad person when you're really not a bad person, you know? So I typically get clients who are going through something like that, or who are needing to reconnect with their inner listening, which is also a Cassandra dynamic. Cassandra is so linked to Mercury and to Venus. And I typically get people who, yeah, they're needing to reconnect with their intuition, their self-sovereignty, might have a lot of codependent issues, family stuff come up, or relational trauma that is just, you know, or sexual trauma. I get a lot of clients that have a lot of sexual trauma stuff. And I mean, I think that that's kind of how EA works, though, you know, is a lot of people don't know my background story necessarily, but on some level they feel like there's a soul tug, like I could share this with this person, and you know, I'm not going to be judged, or and then looking at it through the lens of astrology, I feel like that's really, I mean, when I think of everyone who I know who practices EA, the things that they've been working on in themselves and integrating through having friendships with different astrologers, we've kind of all talked on some level that we tend to attract those people who are needing to work on that. And on some soul level, they're resonating with that inner vibration of, oh, I think that this person could possibly say something or plant a seed for me. And so I mean, that's another reason why I love EA, you know, is you don't even have to share your story sometimes for someone to just kind of feel like, man, I really need to get this off my chest. And I feel like you're the person who could listen to me, you know?
It's like a soul hug, isn't it? It's that, you know, if you don't get that, because we all need it, where, you know, human beings, we need connection. We need to be, you know, with like-minded individuals. And for me, and I know Sue feels the same, you end up building, it's a family, and it's a soul family, you know.
Yes.
It's a sense of coming home, or we're walking home, if that makes sense. You know, we're
Yes.
treading on that path that's linking us back to the original truth of the divineness that's within all of us. And essentially, that's what EA, for me, it was always about. This feels like home. This feels like, you know, it's like the yellow brick road in Dorothy, and I'm like, okay, you know, the wizard and going towards that castle. But it's very much, and I know it's we work on this every day. We may work with EA as astrologers and have clients and stuff, but it's also personal growth that's taken place as much as
Oh
we're
my
helping
God.
others. Yeah.
Yes. Like I would
Yeah.
say above all, I mean, going back to me being in therapy for so long, what I what I found with EA is what took me 22 years in a matter of listening to a recording over the archetype of Virgo. Within an hour, I got to the bottom of, like, holy moly, like, that's it. Why was this never talked about before? You know, and really having an understanding of, oh, this is why I've put myself in certain situations or chosen certain things. And okay, now I don't have to do this anymore, you know? And that's the beauty of it. There's this expression that comes to my mind. And it's very Virgo. This came from my dad a long time ago, who's a Capricorn, by the way, and he has the same nodes as me. And I remember, like, in some of I was like in the throes of just despair and eighth house, right? And wanting to hold myself accountable and like crying to my dad. I had to have been like 22, 23. And I remember he said to me, well, George, the good news is you don't ever have to be that person again if you don't want to be. And I feel like EA gives you that gift all the time of, like, as you are coming back to like your soul nature, you get to make that choice of, oh, like, and now I know, but I don't ever have to do that again. I don't have to be that person again, you know? And I can keep moving forward and peeling back the layers of the onion. And each time I do it, it's not cataclysmic or so hard anymore, because I'm actually working and surrendering to this process instead of trying to control it, you know? So
The conscious awareness that it
Mhm.
brings rather
Absolutely.
than subconscious. Yeah.
And the ability to choose our family.
Yes, that would be a huge one for me, as
Yeah.
you both know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yes. And along those lines, I noticed that your Juno is in the fourth house is stationary direct. And that it kind of brings that to mind, but it also brings to mind that as we speak, Mercury is stationing direct. And there's also in your progressions, your Mercury has just stationed direct. So maybe we can transition to talking about that a little bit. Let's see. I think the next chart I have here. Oh yeah, here's today's chart. And oops, that isn't what I meant to do. Let me share that again. Okay. So what I meant to do was get the annotator here to show, okay, here's Mercury right here, stationing, and it is, as we were talking about before we started recording, it is right at the point where our Venus star was in Leo last summer, I think it was. And the other thing is that Ceres station direct, I think it was yesterday, and has just barely started moving forward. And the remarkable thing about Ceres is it's very far out of bounds south, which, I mean, I'm still researching, and gathering information on what the out of bounds thing means, but it seems to me that it's, like when it's out of bounds in the south, it's about going really deep down inside. And the other thing I noticed was that it is, like pretty nestled into your chart,
Yeah.
being right between your, what was it, Uranus and Saturn?
It's in between my Saturn and Neptune.
Saturn and Neptune. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had the nodes squaring all of those planets as well. So
Right. Yes. The transiting nodes here, which are been kicking everybody's butt.
yeah.
The other thing I noticed also is that the asteroid Eros is conjunct the south node. It will perfect, I think maybe around the time of the eclipse. I'm not absolutely sure on that one. But it just seems like we're in a transition period, which I'll let you talk about, how that is in your chart. But I just wanted to, kind of preface it with what today's what's going on in today's chart. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about this, or shall we just move on to?
Well, let's just see how it links with, sorry, I was going to say it links with Jordyn's chart to give the audience a bit of like context
Okay.
in terms of how it's playing out. If you want, Jordyn.
Yeah, I mean,
Anything you want to say about this one before we move on?
I mean, for me, I think it's really important on a social collective level, series being about recovering a collective nature, a collective soul nature. And Capricorn, whenever it is expressed naturally within the collective, it means that the collective, the social structure, Capricorn, is structuring itself through natural law instead of the distortion or the perversion of that, which is patriarchal. And so with Ceres squaring the nodes again, it's why we've continued to see, with that resolution being the South Node and in Libra, it's why we've seen all of the extremes or the imbalances really be highlighted of where we've strayed away from structuring society in a way that's rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion. Libra, the natural expression, that's a natural law, where we have instead not listened, Libra, to a collective about what's going on, the hurt, the pain, the extremes, the unfairness, the unjustness that's seen. And so, especially as Pluto re-enters Capricorn on the 2nd, when we have a new moon in Virgo, this is still going to be highlighted, and really Ceres is here to help us to remember, to recover. How do we want to utilize what it is that we're seeing? And with Saturn and Pisces ruling that, what is the vision? What is the dream that we have within the collective to help remedy this? You know, what is the extreme that can counteract this extreme? So that's one way that I see this, that it could be healing, but it's really up to free will and choice of the collective right now. And so we're seeing it play out in politics and government systems, not just in America, but everywhere, all over the world. It's not just here, it's everywhere. And it's because there is this need to recover a more natural way of living, meaning that we're rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion instead of exclusion.
Yeah.
I love that, Jordyn. You always have such a way with words and with the transits and explaining them. And the only thing I would add is that right now the moon's in Cancer, you know, filling out that cardinal square, cardinal cross. And I think that I have felt that series. I felt it personally, but on a collective level, that we have been digging very deep in and going, you know, going back and touching on issues that have been in the collective for ever.
Eons.
Eons,
Yeah.
that was the word that came to mind here too. All right, so all right,
Yeah.
let's move on. And so the connection that I noticed was that this is, I don't normally look at a progress chart as a standalone chart, but this one, yours, Jordyn, seemed to be asking me to do that because not only is your Mercury has just stationed direct, you just had a new moon in Aquarius, and your progressed ascendant just moved into Cancer. Not only that, but and this was very happenstance, but the what is it, I forget, Maki is a minor planet, or she's the same in the same category as Ceres and Eris. No, Eris, maybe not Ceres, but anyway, she's the Easter Island creation goddess. And what she talks about, I mean, what her connection is with the environment and taking care of taking care of our environment. And for you, she has been hovering, right very close to your south node and your Juno. And let's see, so so your nodes are getting close. Your node is getting closer to Maki Maki. So tell us about that.
I mean, for me personally, I think right now what that's picking up on is, so Virgo often is linked to being a good steward of the world, I feel like. It's like stewardship, helping to improve. It's got a natural linkage to Taurus because it's an earth sign. So it's like being a good steward of the land. And one of the things that I've been doing is volunteering at my son's school to the garden and teaching there. And I think that that's, whenever you said that to me the other day, I was like, there's actually something going on in my life that I think fits perfectly in with that. So, and Leo is on that third house cusp. So like with children, you know, my son is 7 years old. He's in second grade. Um, and so I've been, you know, helping in that realm at his school. And that was the first thing that came to my mind is, yeah, that.
That's great. And you know, that's so important moving forward to because I think that's something that has been lost in education for one. And I noticed that the school here is doing that too. They have a school garden, and they have people come in and teach the kids about, you know, about gardening and about ecology and the environment and stuff like that. I think it's really important that doing that going forward. And I totally agree that it's a Virgo Taurus combination.
Yeah. I mean, it's for him. I mean, you guys know this. I'm wanting to move from here pretty soon and get my son into a different kind of schooling, where, yes, his school here, they have a garden and it's amazing. I don't think that there's many other schools here where I live that do that. But I want to get him into, you know, the Waldorf school or something like that on the East Coast whenever I'm hopefully moving there in the spring. So that way he can hone that for himself, because I had him during a nodal opposition, and his nodes are also in the 6th and 12th houses, you know, except for it's paradoxical. So I just feel like it's really important. It's something that he loves. He's got a moon in Taurus in the 9th house. This is a nature lover, you know, he's what I would consider a daemon soul, just like myself. And so anything I can do to help him reconnect with that, I think is really important for me as a mother. You know, I remember my grandmother, she was a horticulturist, and growing up and helping her in the garden, her and her partner that she had, which is the only grandfather I've really ever known, instilled a lot of that. The love of homeopathy comes from my grandmother, which is such a Virgo dynamic as well. And so teaching my children about that, or making things, food that's really delicious and nurturing, you know, and talking about the properties of it, I think is really important. It's an important skill that ties back to my indigenous roots. That's something that you do in indigenous culture, is you're learning your for what you call it, your what is the word I'm looking for? It starts with an F. Mercury retrograde here. It
Fortify.
doesn't matter. No,
I was gonna say forging.
Foraging, thank you. You're foraging
Oh.
for, you know, different native species. And so even things like that, I've taught my son about that, you know, like pokeweed in the backyard, or I don't know, just like the
Cleavers.
wild violets. Yeah, cleavers. We had this conversation.
You taught me about
Cleavers.
cleavers.
Yeah. So it's just the things that are even that I can find in my yard that I'll teach my son about, you know, that are native to Oklahoma. And teaching him about like, this is what this is. And because I have my apothecary at my house, like I've been teaching him, this is how you make a tincture and this is what you do. And, you know, both of my kids are really into it. And I feel like it's something that in natural communities you would do anyway. You know, if we were to go back even 100 years, people would be teaching their kids about this, because it's natural resources, and teaching your kids about how you forage for things, and how you only take what you need, and there's certain times that you don't take from a plant, you know, and there's certain times where you can, and you know, to give it thanks because it's sentient, and it's, you know, it's having a relationship with you, same as whenever you're growing certain things, you know. Yeah, I feel like it's really, really important to be teaching children about this.
And how perfect for
Yeah,
your,
that everything's alive.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
How perfect for your progressed ascendant moving into Cancer.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yes, absolutely.
And then the
But it's
other
also
the other two well, and your Capricorn Mercury you know, has probably been retrograde for more than half of your life, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's you know, reached back to where it's turned direct and is starting to move forward. Is there anything about that you want to add, or that comes to
Yeah,
mind?
I think so much of there's a few things, so much for my own personal healing in this life is about me having my own voice of authority, and just speaking about how I'm feeling emotionally. Um, because I've had a lot of situations in this lifetime where I've been in oppressive environments that don't want me to talk about something, you know, because you're talking about Oz, the Wizard of Oz. I'm the person who likes to pull back that curtain, Rob, and talk about the deeper things. And
Yeah.
that I chose a structure in my life where it's almost like my Mars in my own natal chart needed to get really pissed off to recover that, you know, like, okay, I'm not suppressing this anymore. So there's
Yeah.
been a lot of healing about me just speaking my truth, or saying what's emotionally going on inside of me, instead of holding it in and becoming angry. So there's been, you know, and this kind of goes in with my Libra moon of learning who to share with and who not to share with, who's safe for me, who's safe to listen to me, who's not safe to listen to me. Um, you know, also not having an expectation that if I tell someone what's going on inside of me emotionally, that they're going to change. Like, that's one of the biggest like pieces of baloney that I think we have as an expectation. And so there's been so many lessons in that Mercury retrograde for me revolving around that. I mean, if we want to think about with astrology, I think my Mercury retrograde has definitely helped. You know, that Mercury retrograde was really helping me to go within and to tap into my intuition. Sue, you talked about me synthesizing things. I think that that's part of it, you know. And then I've had a lot of things come up around my siblings. I will say that. That I'm not going to get into in case I doubt they would watch this, but in case they did, but there's been a lot that has happened with my siblings, especially whenever a Mercury retrograde cycle will occur as well. Like there was one last year on my birthday that happened. And I hadn't talked to a sibling in over 5 years, and I get a phone call. You know, you can't really make this up. And so what it did is it gave me the opportunity um to use my voice and just to verbalize, you know, for my own healing, what I needed to say. And yeah, that's one way that I can say that it's played out. So I am looking forward to it stationing direct for sure. Like,
Well, and I might add that Pluto has been chasing it. Pluto has gone over this point too in the last few years, and at the same time squared your natal moon. So,
and sat on top of my own natal Mercury. So yeah,
yeah,
it's
right. And the oh yes, and the other point is that your Mercury is back where it was when you were born, right?
no, it was at 28.
Oh, okay. So it's almost it's back. It has gone
Behind.
back
Mm-hmm.
past it and
Behind.
stayed there, and now it'll once it starts moving. It's now stationary direct, which means that it's still sitting still, but
Yeah.
it'll start moving forward, and in the next few years we'll go back over your natal
It's
placement.
emphasized. Yeah. And I mean, it's trining my Jupiter in this chart. I can say that I've had a lot of people who have been reaching out for me to tutor them or to be more in a teacher role. So I have like the whole astrological counseling, but then people who are really getting excited about evolutionary astrology who have asked me, can you mentor me? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I think that that's probably some of that as well.
Absolutely.
That's
And then
perfect,
the
yeah.
final thing before we move on and look at it all together with your natal chart is your progressed new moon just in June in Aquarius, and also you know, Pluto moving into Aquarius, and now it'll chase your your progressed Venus for a while. So yeah,
I mean, if we think about this in June, whenever this happened, that's whenever Uranus was conjunct my natal Jupiter. Uranus is at 27 right now, so it's still conjunct.
mm-hmm.
But and my Jupiter is ruled by my natal Venus. It's a mutual reception. There's something I want to speak about that kind of ties into this. I feel like we don't have a chart for it, but if you were to look at my solar return for this year, all of the angles are reversed in that chart. And that can be where, from my understanding of where everything that you've been karmically working on up until this point has, from birth, has the opportunity to be healed. Like those karmic lessons have, there's a propensity for one to be able to integrate them fully, but it can make it to where the external environment is like kind of knocking on the internal environment, like, hey, and I think that it really speaks to some of what you're talking about. So much of this has been, yeah, it's been recovering my voice, but it's also about expanding my relationship through really liberating from the conditioning I have about myself. That's these beliefs that aren't in alignment with my actual truths. And I think that that's that new moon in this chart in the 9th house, is this continued effort to really observe what it is that I'm telling myself that can impede upon me continuing to do this integrative work on a karmic level. You know, it's about me really releasing these old beliefs about myself that have led to all of the things that I've kind of shared with you guys, you know, in this whole session. So this has been, I feel like, a really big year for me. You know, it's also talking about I'm wanting to move. I
Mm.
feel karmically I've done my responsibility here in Oklahoma, with my family, with, you know, like my family of origin, with the social structure here. And so a lot of this is about me liberating from this environment as a way to cultivate new community, you know, to be around more like-minded people that are in alignment with my values and my truths. And I think that that's part of what you're seeing in this chart as well.
Yeah. I was thinking your time is done. Is that it's
Yeah.
the next phase?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can feel that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Uranus has been knocking on my door for a
Huge,
while.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hello,
So,
Jordyn.
yeah.
Because it's gone over your ascendant, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move to the other
There's a
chart where
physical
we've got,
change happening as well. Like, you know, it
Yeah.
probably came suddenly, like, I need to go now. It has to be done. Now's the time
Well,
to.
it was true Uranian fashion of I kept thinking about it, and then there came a time where I was like, now I need to make this happen. And how do I make this happen? And
Mm.
so that's what I've been doing is following that inner guidance, that inner soul pull, that inner like whisper of, hey, now it's time. That way I can continue to evolve, because this would be a stagnant for me and for my children as well, you know.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting that your son's 7, so his first Saturn square, right? So it's sort of
Yes.
like, right, what to do? Let's go.
Yeah.
well, and here we have, you know, your friend Lilith and Pallas Athena over here opposing the Jupiter Uranus,
Mm.
and you know, on your Vesta too, just kind of I don't know, echoing the Libra part and the, you know, the partnership and the
Which I can speak to
fruition.
this a little bit. I can
Absolutely.
speak to this a little bit, actually. So this is like, I mean, talk about a Libra moon in the 6th. Oh my God, I used to be horrendously codependent. And like, if I would get my value from like guys, oh, just kind of makes me sick to think about it now, like on a personal level, because I realize how far against my nature it is. But I've connected with someone who is from high school, reconnected, and I was thinking about this the other day, and although like he's a lovely human being, I have no intention of, he knows this, I've said this, of I don't want to be with anyone right now. I want to like really focus on me. But I was thinking about this, and this is what kind of shows this. In the past, there have been times where I could leave Oklahoma, but there would be a boy or there would be something, and I would be like, no, I'm going to stay here, you know. And that thought has never crossed my mind. It's like, no, I'm getting the hell out of Dodge. Like, no matter what is going on here, you could be the loveliest human being, but that's not going to keep me. It's like these very Capricornian cardinal tests of, you
Yes.
know, have you changed? Are you
Yeah.
staying whole into yourself? And the time whenever I think about it is I'm like, oh yeah, I am, because that thought actually didn't ever cross my mind. It's just like, yeah, I'm going regardless.
Well, and
Isn't it amazing how, sorry, Susie, it's just on that note, how people sometimes think once you've had an astrology reading, you've got the, you know, gist of where the soul wants to go, that there'll be no more tests, that you've figured it out. This is like, no, the more you know, the more you'll be tested to your core truth. And yeah, and that's the universe kind of saying,
Uh,
knock, knock. Okay,
yeah,
Jordyn.
and I share this with as many clients as I can, and I'm gonna cuss, because I am repeating words, and they were so something I absolutely needed to hear. I remember I was on the message board and I was asking about Capricorn. It had nothing to do with myself, but it was just about about self-determination and things like that. And I had asked Rad this question, and I didn't know that I needed to hear this, even though it had nothing to do with me, but apparently I did. I don't even remember exactly what I was speaking to pertaining to the self-determination. And he said, yes. And with Capricorn, the soul will test itself to be self-determined to say, and I quote, fuck no, I am not that person anymore. And that is, I continuously, since Pluto has been sitting on my Mercury in Cap, squaring my moon, I have had these Capricornian soul tests to say that. And it's like every time I do, I can't tell you how good it feels to me to then reflect, right, in true Capricornian fashion of I have come so far because I wouldn't be making this choice, and that is the beauty of EA is once you start gaining momentum on doing what it is that you're supposed to be doing, each time it gets easier and easier. It doesn't mean that it's not uncomfortable as all get out, because it is. But it's just like, oh, I've done this dance. And instead of it being about karmic recycling and getting down on yourself, it's about like kind of like, well, here's an opportunity. Like, let me be self-determined here, like it's kind of this, and maybe this is speaking to kind of my Jupiter and Taurus, it's healing for my self-esteem, right? It's like, it's growing my self-esteem in a natural way. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Jordyn, you're
might
speaking to a
add,
Capricorn moon. I totally get it. Yeah. Yes, Sue.
Yeah.
and what I would add is, and here comes Cassandra in Capricorn.
Yes.
So that's the transiting?
That's
23 degrees
transiting, yes,
Capricorn?
yes, sorry, the outside circle is today's
Yeah.
transits. The middle one is Jordyn's progressed planets, and the middle one is her natal chart.
Which my progressed chart, Kassandra is conjunct my natal sun, which
Right.
I find
Oh, look at that.
interesting. So, but yeah, there's a resurgence in Kassandra. This is about women using their voices, and also men. I mean, I guess I could talk about this a little bit. Like, I'm doing my lecture for the conference on Kassandra. Clearly, we can't make this up. I was asked to do this lecture. I didn't even think about doing this. This was something that Kristen and Rad were like, will you do a lecture over Kassandra? And I was like, sure.
Wow.
I love Kassandra. So for me, I've seen this as I've dived more and more into this archetype. Think about like the Me Too movement or these big instances. If you go back and you look at the transits of Kassandra, where women have been emboldened in the most beautiful way to speak up and to speak out about something that usually is not listened to or heard or believed. And then you look at their charts as well, you can see that this is such a powerful time for people who are, one, recovering their voice. These are things that are repeating from their prior lifetimes where they could have been persecuted or ostracized for this, right? And then we even see it with men. There's like been whistleblowers, for corporations. How's that for a Cassandra and Capricorn? You think about the whole Boeing dynamic, all of these things. So there are people who are, because it's in alignment with, this is why Cassandra, it's not just about Cassandra, it's about Mercury and Venus as well. So it's about your personal relationship to yourself. It's the inner side of Venus, and like your own, and then your inner knowledge and empowering your voice, recovering this. And so I challenge people to start following Cassandra in transit, and seeing the resurgence of, people who are recovering this dynamic, that they are being ethical. They're following their own values, the Venus part of this. You know, they're mustering all of their courage and they're being fearless. Even if their hands and their knees are shaking, they're speaking up about something that needs to be spoke. I have chills talking about it. They're speaking up about something that needs to be spoken up about. And so we can see this playing out in the collective right now. And I am really excited that I'm going to be teaching about it, if you couldn't tell. So yeah.
I think it's
right now. Yeah, I've just realized right now that that transit is going through, or it will be building up to my moon. So I'll be paying close attention to that.
yeah.
So where's that linking for you? At
Uh,
23
it-
degrees.
It's on my descendant. And I'm not sure where she turns direct, but she's been retrograde for a while. Didn't she go into Aquarius?
Yes.
with
Yeah, she was
Pluto?
actually conjunct Pluto
Right.
probably 4 or 5 months ago. So
Okay, and then
Okay.
and she'll come back and do that again. And I mean,
mhm.
my guess is that will be maybe around the United States election. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Interesting.
very
On
interesting.
that note, Jordyn, I actually want to just move on a little bit, and just because you mentioned, you know, you're attracting students and you're mentoring astrology, what advice would you give, you know, to somebody who wants to become a professional astrologer?
I mean, I would follow your heart. Like I was terrified of doing this, so I'm going to speak about it through my own lens. I was terrified. I had a lot of questions like, can it even be done? You know, what will people think of me? Like I have, you know, Leo on my you know, I see kind of stemming parent stuff, right? And I think the other dynamic is, yeah, follow your heart and like the path will unfold for it for you to be determined. It's going to look different. Each one of us have our own personal and unique voice within this field. And if there's something inside of you, a fire has been lit, it's been ignited. It's like, oh my God, I want to do this. A path will unfold naturally, and you just need to keep listening to yourself as it keeps unfolding and taking it step by step, and to be self-determined, to just keep going. I mean, I remember I had a teacher and for a short time, and then I decided that I wanted to solo study, and I just immersed myself in this. And then, you know, I came out of it and I got another mentor, and that mentor told me, which I'm so grateful for, like, you just need to be doing this. And each one of those times that I reached out to someone or I did something, it's because I got like a gentle tap, like, this, go this way or go this way, because it can feel daunting. It can feel like, how the hell do you even make a career out of this? You know, especially for me, like living where I do. But I followed that inner guidance. And if it's EA, you're going to be divinely directed. How? If you just pay attention. And it's going to look different than my path. It's going to look different than your path, Rob. It's going to look different than your path, Sue. But there will be people who will help you along the way. If you get the gentle nudge to reach out or to ask, opportunities will open up, as long as you continue to have the self-determination and to also get into Virgo. Like, you're always going to be an apprentice in this. Like, my britches are never going to get too big for me. I don't know everything, you know. I think that that's one of the reasons why I love it, because I have Jupiter on my ascendant. Whenever I was younger, I was a know-it-all a little bit, because things got really boring, you know. I'd be like, I know this, like, And so I would just off, out with the fairies, like would quit paying attention, right? Jupiter retrograde. But yeah, that would be my advice, is to follow your own inner guidance, and doors will be, the path will be revealed. Doors will open for you. I haven't not seen that happen with anyone who has had the determination and the desire coming from a very sincere place with this, that hasn't happened for them, period. So that would be my advice.
Beautiful. I agree.
That-
Absolutely agree. And yeah, you talk about the heart. Your fourth house is Leo.
Yes.
Right,
Follow the heart.
yes. So before we wrap up, I have one question, and that I love to ask, and that is, what do you do in your spare time?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Any spare time that I have these days is like spent with family
That was-
members.
I was actually just watching. I was like, okay, that's brilliant.
He's a goober. He's living his best life, you guys. No, he has allergies, so he's like,
Always
but
itching.
yeah, but he's
Bless,
enjoying
this
it.
is
That
having
rug is
come and
amazing.
play.
So in my spare time, I love cooking for my family. I love gardening, and I love making potions, is what my youngest calls them. And I love, whenever I do get to do this, I love making art. It's one of my favorite things. So
Well, and
Nice.
you do all of them with such panache. I mean, some of the things I see you post that you cook for your family. I mean, you have this feast laid out, and yeah. So you definitely get into it.
yeah, that kitchen time is so much, it's magical. So we crank the music up, we dance, we hang out, and it's just like a party every time that I cook. And
Leo on your fourth house cusp.
there you go. That is one of my favorite things to do in my spare time.
And I was thinking Taurus ascendant food.
Yeah,
Healthy
yeah.
food
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
for the body.
On
for the
steroids
soul.
with Jupiter there.
pretty much. And
Right, before we go,
my oldest is a Taurus, and my youngest has a Taurus moon. So you can tell we all love this.
nice. I love food too. It's great. Before we do wrap up closing, Jordyn, my favorite question now is, apart from astrology books, are there any other books that's inspired you in your life that you recommend that, the audience should read? It can be astrology, but if anything else has jumped out.
There's a couple.
Mhm.
I would say Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. I got to do her workshop pre-TED Talk. On Relationship by Krishnamurti.
Hmm.
And then this is so my 8th house with Capricorn. A Child Called It is a really good one. So
that's heartbreaking, but I agree. I read it and powerful.
yes.
Child Called It, yeah.
And
That is
then,
definitely your 8th house.
yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to think, I'm sure something's going to come to my mind after I leave here, but those are the 3 that I think about that are profound for me, for sure.
Perfect. That's
Awesome.
beautiful.
This has been so much fun, Jordyn.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and for being so forthcoming and willing to share all of the details of your life that I am sure has helped at least one person to understand where we are and where we're going.
Well, I appreciate this opportunity. I love you 2 ladies so much. So
Jordyn.
Back at you.
Jordyn, you were probably one of the first to reach out to Sue when we advertise that we're going to do this Astro Coffee, because Sue wrote to me saying, Jordyn just wrote back saying, I'm in.
Yep.
I was like, yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And we will put
Timing.
your contact information and the references and everything in the description of the video, and your website, and you have a number of videos on the EA Zoom channel and on your own YouTube channel, and we'll put that in the description. And again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.